Sup y'all, welcome to my Protection Warrior guide for Dragonflight. I will mostly be covering M+ specifics. If you are completely new to the game or the class, you might want to start off by checking out a Wowhead guide to learn the basics. Let's start with the talent build. So this is my recommended talent build. With this build, the points you can swap are Intimidating Shout and Titanic Throw. You can drop these 2 points to pick up things like Bitter Immunity, which will be nice in some dungeons, or you can go for Piercing Howl here if you ever need that slow. And for whatever situation that might require Intervene, you could go for that. There are also other damage options you can go for, like Sidearm or Barbaric Training. Down here, you could also go for Immovable Object if you want the extra tankiness from having Shield Wall by pressing Avatar. You could also drop some points to go for Spear of Bastion if you ever need it, but I don't really ever see a situation where you might want this. So yeah, here are the flexible choices. You can go for this. You could drop here and here for this, but for the most part, just stick with this build. On the protection side, you should use this for the most part. It's got a good balance of damage, but mostly defensiveness. If you want more damage, you could drop Spell Block for Tough as Nail if there's not a whole lot of magic damage. And you could also drop Battle Scarred Veteran for Punish. Or you could even drop Show of Force. You want some more tankiness, but you still want Punish. And over here, you can go for Into the Fray instead of Heavy Repercussions if you want a little bit more damage. Heavy Repercussion will secure the 100% shield block uptime. For stats, keep it simple, just focus on item level, but when given a choice of stats, try to prioritize haste and versatility. Before we get into the rotation, let's talk about what you should track so you'll have a better understanding of what to do in an encounter. Warrior is fairly basic for what you need to keep track of. On your UI, I would highly recommend having a tracker for your shield block, ignore pain, the stance you are in, and your defensive cooldowns. Now for your rotation. Defensively, you will want to have Shield Block and Ignore Pain up at all times. This is very easy to achieve because of all the new Dragonflight talents. Offensively, you will want to keep Shield Slam and Thunderclap on cooldown. This is why on my UI, you will only see Shield Slam, Thunderclap, and Shield Block being tracked on my cooldowns. To start a pull, Warrior is very simple. Go in with Thunderclap, Shield Slam to pick up targets, and as you're grouping up the mobs, put up Shield Block and Ignore Pain. Use Shield Charge to help with getting your mitigation up while building Thread. Throw in some Revenges while your Shield Slam and Thunderclap are on cooldown. Avatar once the mobs are grouped up, use Ravager, then Thunderous Roar, and finally Demoralizing Shout to maximize your burst. In this cooldown burst window, you will have an overflow of Rage. Make sure to not overcap your Rage by spamming your Ignore Pain and putting up Shield Block charges. From here on out, you just continue to do the same with keeping Shield Block up, Ignore Pain, and keeping Shield Slam plus Thunderclap on cooldown. Let's talk about how to set up pulls. The general idea is to use Throw Axe to pick up mobs from far, Thunderclap, Shield Slam, and Revenge to pick up mobs close, and Charge, Shield Charge, plus Heroic Leap to reach your tanking spot. Always try to prioritize pulling close with Thunderclap and Shield Slam, since they generate way more aggro than a range ability like Throw Axe. Avoid wasting your gap closers unless you know you have enough to reach your destination. Once you get your pulls going, you should have sufficient aggro from your massive burst window of Avatar, Ravager, and Thunderous Roar combo. For every other pull where you don't have burst, you should use Challenging Shout instead. So your pull should look like Avatar plus damage CDs, then for the next pull, Avatar with Challenging Shout, then the one afterwards will be back to Avatar with damage CDs. Now about defensive play. Warriors have a wide array of tools to use defensively. When starting off, you should be immortal with Avatar, Ravager, Thunderous Roar, and Demoralizing Shout. During this window, you can spam Ignore Pain to take no damage. If there is a lot of magic damage afterwards, you have Spell Reflect or Spell Block, make you immortal to any type of damage but bleeds. Dwarf Ratio and Bitter Immunity should cover the bleed damage if there are any encounter with bleed damage. Shield Wall is also on a very short cooldown, so prioritize that afterwards. If for whatever reason you are still in danger after that, you have Last Stand and Rallying Cry, and as a last resort, you can just proc Battle Scarred Veteran. For advanced play or min-maxing, I'll start off by saying I highly do not recommend sitting in battle stance. There will be moments where it is safe, but also many times where you should not even think about it. Warriors already do sufficient damage, and as a tank, you will time every key as long as you play clean and safe. So to min-max damage, you will want to play in battle stance as much as possible. This is a huge damage gain, but it's also much riskier. The most important moments to be doing this is in your Avatar, Thunderous Roar, and Ravager window. This is when you'll be doing peak burst and take little to no damage. Afterwards, I will recommend swapping back to defensive stance. As I've mentioned earlier in the video, you should keep track of what stance you were in. Tracking Violent Outburst proc will also be a nice way of min-maxing. When you get this proc, try to use Shield Slam over Thunderclap. As for general gameplay, try to make use of all your utility. Warriors have a ton of utility, especially when it comes to stopping mobs. Try to figure out what abilities you can spell reflect, which mobs you can stop with Intimidating Shout, Stormbolt, Shield Charge, and Shockwave. Warriors have some of the best utility for stopping mechanics. I'd also recommend figuring out where Berserker Shout, Piercing Howl, and Rally would be helpful. There are many situations where these buttons can save you or your team. High damage fights like Herja, Rally would be extremely valuable. Affixes like Spiteful, Piercing Howl would be useful. In dungeons like Temple of Jade Serpent, where if a fear could potentially go off, Berserker Shout can save a wipe. That is it for the guide. Warrior is quite simple to pick up, and everyone looking to play Warrior should do just fine with this. I have some macros like swapping stance with one button and all my UI related stuff down in the description below. Thanks for watching, and have fun in Dragonflight.